All right, you're ready to go.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for being here. I'd like to call to order the 2064th meeting of the City of College Place City Council. Will the clerk please take roll call?
I will. Councilmember Bobbitt.
Present.
Councilmember Cleveland.
Present.
Councilmember Peterson.
Present.
Councilmember Nyhagen.
Present.
Councilmember Selby.
Present.
Councilmember Sherman.
Present.
And Councilmember Trope has requested be excused tonight, so we will add that to the consent agenda for tonight. And we also have, of course, Mayor Hernandez, City Attorney Ree Colwell, City Administrator Mike Rizzatello, our Finance Director Brian Carlton, and Deputy Finance Director Desherie Cinnamon, our Police Chief Troy Tamaris, Community Development Director John Rickard, and with him is our consultant Greg Dorn, our HR Manager Sean Doring, Deputy Clerk Carolyn Holm, and myself. Did I miss anybody?
12.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a full house tonight.
We have a full house and we have a quorum.
Excellent. Great. Thank you. So will you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And Councilmember Nyhagen would like to get us started into our meeting this evening with a few words.
Bow our heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we're thankful that we can come and do the business of the city. We thank you so much that we have such a wonderful council and an outstanding staff of our city. Father, we pray for those that are suffering from this virus, that we will ask you as a master physician to touch them and let them be well, Lord. It's such a mess, and we just can only depend on you. We thank you and give you the praise and the glory. Let everything that hath breath praise the Lord. Amen.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Nyhagen. It is now time for public comment. Did anyone submit a comment or arrange to speak?
They did not.
Okay, all right, thank you. So then we're going to move on to the consent agenda, which consists of excusing Councilmember Trope for his absence today, approve agenda for November 24th, 2020, approve council minutes from November 10th, 2020's meeting, the Walla Walla County Hazard Mitigation Plan, and the October 2020 check register and financials. Are there any items that the council would like removed from the consent agenda? Okay, if not, is there a motion?
I move we accept the consent agenda.
Great, thank you. Do we have a second?
Second, Peterson.
This is Councilmember Selby.
All right, thank you very much. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. The agenda is passed. The motion's passed for the agenda. Thank you. So we do not have any presentations today. Let's move on to public hearings. We have a public hearing scheduled tonight on the 2021 to 2026 capital facilities plan by Mr. Rizzatello.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
So what's before you tonight is the public hearing for the Capitol Facilities Plan. I've went over this several times at length over the past couple months. So I'm not going to get too deep into it just because I went over it a lot of times. But there's 2 iterations of documents in front of you. The one which is plan _ mid-November renditions, actually a booklet. It says essentially how we're funding things, where it's coming from. And if you go on the booklet, on page 4 of the booklet itself in red type, it actually explains the methodology for how we work on road projects, such as ones that are federally classified. Those we're able to get grant money for, so we're able to move those along quicker. But yet our local roads, like for instance, like Date, Broadway, Cedar, those are local and those are ineligible for federal and state grants. So key things like that. The summary document, it has the name of the project, and it has the number, the priority, where it's located, what it is, and then the status. The status details essentially if we're doing it this year or if it's planned. I did add a 3rd category. It's in lighter green where I put a budgeted - COVID delay. And what those projects are is we still plan on doing them next year, but we're going to hold off doing them more toward like the middle of the year, because a lot of the ones that would be held off would be really dependent upon the contractor availability and weather conditions. And holding off the projects till mid-year, that just allows us some wiggle room in case the economy shifts one way or another, because as you know, this COVID situation in a variety of fronts is very multifaceted and it's ever changing. Also in the spreadsheet, it goes out 6 years total project costs and how it's funded. I will go over the ones that we are planning to do next year in the spreadsheet. So in the fire department, we're starting work on that regional fire training tower with City of Walla Walla and then District 4. So our first contribution of $50,000, that'll be next year. And we're doing that because we never contributed to the training tower we used since the 70s. So now that one is pretty much shot and we need a new training tower for all fire agencies. Exterior staircase at the fire department, that's for 30. That's color coded. Is a little bit of a delay until mid-year though, so we can just make sure we're on good footing. Fire HVAC for 15,000. So that's the projects for fire department. Next year, police department, we have the replacement of the one heater chiller. We plan on doing that next year, but again, we'll put that until the springtime. Just make sure we have room in the budget. Also, police evidence building. That was in this year's budget. It took quite a while, though, to get architectural plans and then to get this thing out to bid. In fact, you're all approving this tonight. So I put that in there just because there's no way you can build that in less than a month. So it is going to carry over into next year. Parks. Our big park, the big park project is Lions Park. So we have the 2 state grants. We have the REAT 2 funds, which if you recall from when REAT 2 was created about 3.5 or so years ago, that was basically done with the intent of starting to fix up our parks. So that was the inherent use of that funding mechanism. So Lions Park, we're going to award the engineering contract on that relatively soon, and we really want to get to construction later next year on it. It likely will go into the following year though, because it is it's a very comprehensive, in-depth project. Also 12th Street Parklet. That Sherwood group, they still are planning to do that. It's just with the COVID restrictions and then the weather changing, the ability to actually get the whole thing done this year doesn't look so good. So likely it will get carried over a little bit in the next year. So that's why it's in parks. Stormwater outfall replacement compared to other years down the road. Next year, we have in there fixed 5 outfalls because they happen to be adjacent to Lions Park. So while we have Lions Park ripped up, it makes the most sense deal with everything that's problematic in that area at that time, so we aren't having to go rip it apart again. Then also deal with some pervasive stormwater issues in the northwest quadrant of town. So Destito Court, which is off of Spagnuolo Circle, that has some pervasive flooding issues. So getting that dealt with, because there's like a crushed stormwater pipe over there, and we're going to be awarding construction on that relatively soon. And then Earl Lane on the other side, because it has similar flooding issues, although not as pervasive. So that's stormwater. Going into streets, you'll see a lot of different color code projects on there. So next year, the 4 Bikes project, putting in the cycle track and pedestrian lighting on 4th Street. We plan on doing that. We have the engineering going for it. I just have it on a little bit of delay because if we needed to, technically we could spend those grant funds in 2022. That does have about 100,000 local match because the grant was for 500. Meadowbrook grind and overlay. Now they have TIB. They should allow us to get that out to bid relatively soon here. So get that taken care of. Installation of stop signs at Whitman Larch, that's going to be contingent on Villages of Fort Walla Walla starting up their project. They need to pay for that. Safe Walk College Place, the engineering plans are done. It looks like the environmental is finally done, and we're positioning that now once we get the final state approvals to just get everything out to bid and that, and we'll finally get the sidewalks on Bade, Davis, and then 12th between Bade and College done in the spring. So that's going in. Chip seal, so doing that in the Bade neighborhood because that allows the condition of the pavement to go for another 10 years. It's a great maintenance tool. Block resurfacing program, that was something we developed because since I've been here, it really has seemed like we've had these like random projects come up where once a year we do end up like resurfacing a block of roadways. So the idea here was to formalize that more into a program, which we're able to do from our software, which now prioritizes street condition. I have that as just budgeted COVID delay because again, it allows us wiggle room. So that's in the streets. Going into wastewater, there's a lot of expense in wastewater next year over just a couple of projects. So wastewater treatment plant improvements long term. I mean, when you look at this thing, that accounts for about 1/4 of our entire capital facility plan, but we're doing the design. We did get an ecology grant low interest loan for that. We'll have design done sometime next year, and then it's going to be getting into the nitty gritty of this, which is headworks, the cooling, the land treatment. So really going to legislature, trying to ask for requests, grants, and or more time because it is a very expensive project. Southwest College Place trunk line, that's going to give us capacity for all of South College Place as well as the lift station. It won't be at capacity. We'll actually have room. And they'll open up an additional area of town across College Avenue. So we got USDA port and ecology funds. That is the construction amount that's in there. Also sewer lining. That is the firm's actually coming relatively soon here because they've had a waiting list of cities and so forth because of COVID. So that's about 2 years worth of work we're doing in that sewer lining project. So there's that. And then going into the water fund, There's 2 projects there. So well number 2. So a lot of that's going to be well house design next year. With the lion's share of the construction going into 2022 because Department of Health changed some of the rules around the design of drinking water well houses, so it led to a delay. And then also replacing some of the old steel water main around Sky and 12th, because the steel main that has some integrity issues, and we're trying to replace all of that. And that's one of the areas that has the highest concentrations. So with that, the grand total is that next year it's about 13.4 million in capital projects across all departments. The 6-year outlook on this, if you take into account everything, is around 81 million. So yeah, a lot of projects, a lot of need. Every year we keep whittling it down. So that's that.
Whew. All right. Thank you, Mr. Rizzatello. Okay, so we're going to go through the, sorry, I kind of lost myself. Okay. Let's see, Mr. Rizzatello's making a speech. Sorry, I lost my place here on the agenda. Okay, sorry, here we are. Sorry, okay. So we're good. That's what I thought we were. Excuse me, everybody. We're going to go through the council members for any questions or comments. And we'll start with Mr. Bobbitt. So any questions or comments, Mr. Bobbitt?
No questions. And Mike, thank you for all the work.
Yeah.
Mr. Cleveland?
No questions.
Mr. Peterson?
Yeah, Mike, you know, I apologize. I think I've asked you this 2 or 3 times, but and just a real quick summary, perhaps, with the state looking at a $4 billion deficit or something. I know we don't have a crystal ball, but we've got the capital and we got operations. What impact do you see, or what could be at risk in the capital budget, I would put at this point?
I mean, with the projects I went over for next year, relatively little for the immediate ones next year, because all of that is obligated money. I would say our most at risk is the wastewater treatment plant, moving fully forward on that one. And I mean, the message that I have communicated to Department from Ecology from day one on that has been along the lines of either give us more grant money and more state aid, or give us more time, because we don't have the funds to just do that at your beck and call, because that's a lot of money. So that wastewater treatment plant, that is the one I would say that is most concerning. The other one that I just cringe at down the line is going to be streets. If you look at what Transportation Improvement Board awarded this year, so 12th Street, which was a grant we turned in for, it didn't get funded. And the main reason is, if you look at the money that they awarded this year, it was about half of what they regularly award. So that is very problematic, because if that continues at that trend, then what that indicates to me is that we're basically on our own with streets, which is a terrifying thought, because we've been successful for a variety of years at getting Transportation Improvement Board funds.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, moving on, Ms. Nyhagen. Any questions or comments? And you're on mute, Marge.
No questions. Thank you, Mike.
All right, Ms. Selby?
You may or may not know this, Mike, but along the lines of Lauren's question, when you have a hybrid or electric car, we actually have to pay a special extra tax when we do our tab renewals, because we don't pay gas tax. So it's supposed to make up for that. But do you know where that money actually goes? Does that go to like Transportation Improvement Board, or are they just sucking it into the general fund?
They're basically sucking it into the transportation account for the state roadways. It's not going into the TIB account. And that's been the problem. Anytime they do these revenue enhancements, for the most part, it's going into the accounts that's helped like with state operations to the detriment of ours.
That sounds like something that we should get the Council of City, the Cities Association and our lobbyist talking about. We probably can't fix it in one session, but we need to start talking about it. Because as I drive a hybrid, I very rarely have to buy gas anymore, but that's because almost all of my driving is within the city of College Place. So I would like the city of College Place to be eligible to get some of that money to work on our roads.
Yep.
That would be wonderful. Thank you, Ms. Selby. Ms. Sherman.
No questions.
Okay, so please remember to use your buttons to raise your hands if you have any additional questions or comments. And at this time, I will open up the floor for public comment. Did anyone submit a comment or arrange to speak at this time?
They did not, and we do not have any participating attendees.
Okay, great, thank you. So we're gonna, please again, remember to use your buttons if, to raise your hand. Do we have any other additional questions or comments at this time? All right, seeing none, is there a motion? Actually, is there a motion to close the public hearing? Excuse me.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Great. Thank you.
Second.
Great. Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Aye.
All opposed? Great. The ayes have it. The hearing is closed. Guess it would be nice to know what you're having a motion about, right? Okay. We also have a public meeting scheduled tonight on the fiscal year 2021 preliminary budget, and Mr. Carlton will do that presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. So here we go for another year of budget. In your packet, you got the budget message, a summary in the detail, and tonight we're going to go through a little PowerPoint presentation going through a lot of the detail. I'll share my screen here. Okay, here we go. Preliminary budget hearing. So since our last presentation on 10/12, we've reconciled and updated the interfund transfers. We've updated the capital expenditures and funding based on Mike's CFP plans. We've met with the departments to examine costs in detail, and we've updated the budget in Questica. Here's a summary of where we're at in total fund balance. Beginning balance just over 16 million, revenues 33 million, expenditures 33.6 million with an ending fund balance of 15.7 million. That's a drawdown of just under $600,000. And as I've discussed in previous meetings, this is totally expected in the fund balance drawdown, particularly relating to the $500,000 we have to pay out of our own reserves for the Southwest Sewer and the REIT money that's been accumulated to fund the Lions Park project. So, and that totals, just under $1 million. So in effect, if you take those two projects out, we've actually are doing, we're growing our fund balance. In previous presentations, I've provided the fund summaries and the fund detail at the beginning of the presentation. I'm going to save it for the end and go through the components that make up the total balance. Here is the 2021 proposed revenues. Major sources. I know in the prior meeting it was concern of how we were growing our retail sales tax. We did drop that down close to $200,000 to a more realistic level. If we look at our 2020 forecast numbers that I did back in June, if we take the last 2 months of the years, we should be at over just 1.6 million in retail sales tax. So 1.7, Mike and I feel is very attainable. Of course, the taxes flow through the utilities. We have our permits and licensing. That number is, if we look at forecast for this year, that's the number that was the significant reduction from prior years due to COVID. Working with John, we've identified the projects we feel are going to go forward next year. Villages at Fort Walla Walla, that's close to 1.2 million in permitting and licenses. The Spitzenberg's apartments, about 172,000. We have Homestead for about 314,000 and Hamby Apartments for 209. Those are the main projects we're looking at going next year. And actually, some of those are going now, and we'll have revenues in the fall. As you can see, charges for goods and services at 6.8 million. And the other main components, interfund transfers of 4.3 million, our grant revenue at 2.4, and loan proceeds on our big projects, 9.5 million. A majority of that is split between the Wells projects and Southwest Sewer. And here it gives a little bit of breakdown of the historical amounts, and just focusing a little on the effect on 2021. You can see personal property taxes are going up by, we submitted our 1% increase, but you know, in the prior presentations that I gave on the property tax levy, it has very little impact on the increase in revenue. Sales tax, as I just previously discussed, at 1.7, taxes at 2.5. Permits and licensing, as you can see, is a 23% increase, but not considerable considering COVID, but not compared to the 2020 budget, which we had all those projects were in there. So then the other major ones, we have contributions, 434,000. That's attributable to the private donations on Lions Park. That's the main contributor to that increase. And our loan proceeds going up considerably. That's just based on Southwest Sewer project. So our total proposed revenues for 2021 is just under $33 million. Now we get into the other side, the money going out, the proposed expenditures. And you can see that 38% of our total expenditures planned for next year is wastewater. You know, $8 million of that is attributable to the Southwest Sewer project. So that's a big expenditure next year. The water projects, that's continuing with the well projects. One thing I do have to confirm is based on the recent changes in Mike's CFP, I have to make sure that we've delayed the expenditures on the well too, that they're going forward. Then we have stormwater has 625,000. This includes not only capital expenditures, but also operating costs. We have our ER&R, 392,000. Our current expense budget is at $5.6 million. I'll get into a little detail on components of that. Our IT budget at 288,000. We have our post-retirement expenditures at 87,000. Streets budget at 1.3 million. We have our REIT, which is Alliance Park, at just under 2.5 million, and we have our capital spending on equipment at 617,000. So that's the makeup of our totaling of the $33.6 million in expected expenditures for 2021.
Brian, I have a quick question. This is
Sure.
Lauren. So I'm a little sideways here. I think I maybe it's late. Debt repayment is included within wastewater and water.
Yeah, those are all a combination of the operating fund, the capital, and the debt.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, Brian.
And we can get into that detail when we see the summary at the end, where you can see the breakout of those different funds.
Thanks.
Here's a detail on where we're at on the department expenditures, and I broke down the key components. Really, the drivers of our expenditures are the current expense and the utilities. You can see here I broke down by department where we're at in the current expense, and I did a historical average. The column on the right shows you what our change is in the 2021 compared to the 2020 forecast. That forecast number, as you recall, was presented to you back in I believe it was July, with the June ending numbers, and then calculated out for the balance of the year. So we can see that I'll just go through, if you have questions on some of I won't go through every single line item. I'll just touch on a few of the ones that have the higher percentages. You can see our court expenditures are going up considerably next year. And that basically relates to our indigent attorneys increase that was approved by council. I think it was at the last meeting. So that's a considerable increase in that cost. A lot of these others are just increasing by salary inflation, just general cost increases. You go down to the city clerk. I know we have a full year of the deputy clerk is in that calculation. The police, you can see the police are, I believe it's a 6% increase in wage for the police next year. Plus they have some additional expenditures. And the big one in there is they do get charged for the, I think it's the new building that they're building out back. That gets included in their expenditures for the year. So that attributes that increase. Again, you can see planning and development. They have increases relative to 2020 when things were so slow. You can see back in the 2020 budget and 19 actuals, the increase for 2020 isn't substantial compared to, the COVID affected year. Tourism has a slight increase because of the amount that's going into doing the festival tree lighting, and then also back into, hopefully we'll have the festivals going again next year, which is anticipated in that budget. Overall, you can see that we have a 7.4% increase in cost proposed next year. And then down at the bottom, you can see where we're at on the utility. These are just the operating accounts of the utilities, the water, a slight increase next year. And actually under the wastewater and stormwater, we're seeing a slight reduction in their operating costs. Now that's a lot of numbers there, but before I move forward, is there any questions so far?
So Brian,
Yep, go ahead.
Councilman Peterson again. So total current expense is the 7.5 million, correct?
Yes.
And that's a combination. When you go back to that pie graph on the previous one, that's a combination of a lot of those slices put together in a slightly different format, correct? Or
Yeah, it is. You can see the current expenses here is showing at $5.6 million. So that does not, this number does not include the interfund transfers,
No, okay.
which are broken out into a separate category. So yeah, so that's included in here at the 1.6 million.
Oh, I see it. Yeah, okay, got it. On that line item, there, take the 7.5 less that, you get, yeah, really close. Okay,
Yeah, it's gonna be off a little bit because I didn't include every single line item in.
Right. I understand.
It's just the key
Yeah.
components by department.
Thanks, Brian.
This is Councilmember Selby.
Yep.
A question and a comment. We had reserves, and we had set a level that we wanted to get our reserves. We wanted to keep our reserves at, and a couple of years ago we were quite a ways above that. But with the $500,000 draw or 600,000 drawdown that we're projecting for next year, where would that leave us with our reserves?
I have that at near the end of the presentation. I have all the reserve calculations presented.
Okay, thank you.
So if you want me to go to that now, I can.
No, as long as we get to it, that's fine.
Yes, it's at the end.
And if we could have the pie charts split out, capital and operating and debt service in the future, I get really confused when it's all in one pie chart.
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
So here's the 2020 budget for staffing. You can see that we're currently at 48.5 FTEs and budgeted for 47.5. There is no additions planned for next year, although there is some. If you look at where we're at right now, we're right in the midst of adding some. So right now we're probably at we're at 4.5 less than the 48.5 FTEs. Right now we're adding, there's a building inspector that's going to come in. The stormwater tech was just hired. There's a budgeted firefighter that was just hired in November, an officer that was budgeted but will be filled by the end of the year, and then a part-time police records clerk. So those are all either just recently hired or are in the process of hired. A number of those, as you recall, we delayed at the start of the year because of the COVID. And we have since the finances look pretty good and the need for those positions is there, that those hirings took place and are either hired or in the midst of hiring. So for next year, no budgeted additions planned. We do have right now the city engineer and the public works director position are one, and that I believe is planned to be placed. I'm not sure, Mike, is that in the summertime or fall?
Yeah, so the idea behind that is that Paul is working toward retirement in the early fall. And I mentioned this when we awarded the contract for the on-call engineer, but the idea is that the replacement for Paul would be like a combination public works director, city engineer. A lot of cities, including Liberty Lake and Airway Heights, utilize that model. And then for a lot of the engineering work and development review with the engineering focus, it's done with the on-call engineering firm. So that's the concept going forward. Just because that definitely, the way our workload is here, that would best address that.
We also we have budgeted part-time reserve police officer, part-time work study. We have our mayor and 7 council members. This is the impact on the wage and planned benefit increases. The police during contract is 6%. Fire is at 4%, but still being negotiated. Our public employees are receiving $109 per month, and it's the third year of a 3-year contract. Our non-union exempt are budgeted at 1%, and our non-union non-exempt at 1%, except for sergeants, which is 6% per contract. Our benefit increases next year, the police are at 1.5%. Everyone else under Regent Medical is at a 4% increase, and no increase for dental or vision. And all those numbers and the projected head counts are all anticipated in the budget. Mike went over this in detail. We'll just touch on it briefly. Just it gives you a little different perspective instead of the big sheet with all the numbers. This kind of gives you one sheet and a few of the highlights. So our total anticipated CFP budget for next year is 13.4 million. 63% of that, of course, is most of that is Southwest Sewer Project, and as well as 15% of the total is in the Lions Park project. Some of the key projects here in the fire, we have fire, the HVAC, we have regional fire training tower, the replace the staircase, chiller and police with the evidence building, processing building at 150,000. And that's the number that I commented on why the police budget is quite a high increase over the prior years due to that gets expensed in their department. Parks, big project, Lions Park renovation at 2 million and the parklet at 10. Stormwater has outfall replacement at 100 and the DeCito and Earl stormwater retrofit at 209,000. The streets has a number of projects next year. The chip seal, the grind and overlay on Southeast Meadowbrook, the 4 Bikes project at 600,000. Stop signs at Women in Larch. We have the Safe Walk projects at 340, and a couple other smaller projects, and the downtown parking lot project for 200,000. Wastewater, that's the big one. Wastewater treatment plant, that's just the design continuing at 500,000, and then budgeted for 7.6 million is the Southwest lift station. And then the sewer lining project at 357. Water has continuing on the well relocations at 243,000, and there's a couple of smaller projects with the water main replacement and the solar array project. Here's the same detail on the equipment repair and replacement. 902,000 is the total budget or planned expenditure for next year. And you can see a majority of that is in the streets, which is a greater replacement is a majority of that. And that detail is here to follow. We have 200,000 for a backup generator replacement and administration. Fire has a few projects, a smaller dollar amount, totaling 77,000. The police has a taser replacement, which is an important project, and their ongoing leasing program for a total of 89,000. Public Works, a number of projects here. And the big, we got the Jacobs contract for equipment that went in 2020. That's 191,000, and a couple other vehicle replacements that are needed. And you can see the grader in there at 160,000, and that grader dates back to, as Mike said earlier, before he was born. I don't think it was before I was born. Here's the IT plan for next year. The great thing about our IT is we've used a lot of the COVID money to beef up our replacement. And this year we're have a considerable amount of expenditure, but it's definitely going to catch us up, and we look good in the years to follow as far as where we're at on our hardware and software replacement. You can see the total for next year is planned at $343,000. And some of the key components here are hardware. We have planned a City Hall AV system at $24,000, the server room work at $40,000, and our body cameras and redaction program for the police department at $30,000. We have our IT service for next year at $62,000, and our GIS consortium at $6,600. This is, I won't go through every line item on the software, but this is definitely, we spend a lot of money on maintaining and keeping up with our software and making sure that we're, you know, being current with technology and also providing us the systems that we need to ensure that we're tracking everything properly and moving forward. A lot of different programs there. Next, I brought up how a lot of these projects are going to be funded. And here's a summary of the projects that we have in for 2021 and the different types of funding. I'll just touch base on some of them. One of the big ones, Lion Park, $2 million project, of which 50% is through an RCO grant. 30% of that is through the REIT 2. And that was the comment I made at the beginning, is that's a big effect on our drawdown on our funds this year, is that money's been accumulated for the last 2 or 3 years to finance this project. We have the 4 Bikes project, which is being funded in part by TIB grant for $500,000, and the remaining coming from our Economic Development Fund. The Southbrook grind and overlay at $314,000 is 90% funded by TIB. We have the Safe Walk College Place, which is 100% funded by CDBG grant. Going down a little further, we have our chip seal program and our block resurfacing, which are funded by our REIT reserves. That also impacting our drawdown, but then again, we do have revenue that we receive for those funds. We have the Majona Road reconstruction project at $711,000, of which 70% is anticipated from developer fees and 20% from MPO funds. The big project, Southwest Sewer, at $7.6 million, of which broken down into various components. The largest component, of course, is the USDA grant that we received, of which of the 6.3 million, 3.3 million is grant and 2.8 million in loan. The well 2 relocation, that one is the one I need to check with the change in timing of the budget. So we may have a modification to that for the next presentation. So just bear with me. So the total that we show in there is $16.3 million. I know that's a lot of information. Is there any questions? Here's our proposed utility rates for this year. A few months ago, we gave the presentation on the utility rate models, and these increases are the direct result of those models. We have the water was at 5% for a total of 4% increase. We have the wastewater at a 3% and the stormwater at 3%. So you can see that the net result is, you know, $3 increase on base fee for next year. Here is the summary of the fund balance. There was concerns about running at a deficit on our current expense. Mike and I and all the departments worked together to do a little bit of cutting, and we now are at a surplus for the year, which is good news. I won't go through every line item in detail, but you can see at the bottom, there's our $595,000 drawdown. And if you go to our wastewater, you can see impact on that is 380,000. And we have our REIT 2 at $458,000 drawdown. We are doing some capital expenditures planned next year. So some of the, you can see in the street fund, we do have a drawdown there as well. And a few of the other projects, you see this drawdown we're closing out. We paid off our fire engine loan this year, and that results in that fund is no longer required. And so that moves that funds into the current expense. You can see that we do have some drawdowns on our technology reserve account, and that's just the capital expenditures that are in the budget for next year. And as Mike commented, in the years moving forward, especially on the IT side, we're pretty much caught up on our replacements, and those capital expenditures are anticipated to go down in the next few years.
Brian, one quick moment.
Yes.
Councilmember Selby has a question.
Thank you. Did I just hear you say that you got it so that we ended up with a surplus? Because
Under the current expense.
so all of the, okay, so all of the deficit is from either dedicated funds or capital?
Yes, you can get into specific details on a few, like the employee benefit reserve. That one is, going down slightly. That's for our REIT, or for our F1 employee. So we're anticipating some expenditures that might not take place, so that, we're sort of leveraging that position. You can see that we're anticipating that we may have an expenditure of 87,000, but that just depends. This year, we've only expended about $12,000 in total. So I guess it's a bit of a placeholder just in case our left one employee goes into extended care or has additional costs. If I run down, my cursor's not, oh, there we go. So there's the REIT 2. That's the drawdown of $458,000 for Lions Park renovation. The Streets Improvement Fund, that's the drawdown for all those street projects that we're doing. That a majority of those are funded by our reserves. We have our equipment reserve is being drawn down a little bit, but we have a number of projects or purchases going this year. The big one will be the grader is a big impact on that. And then you can see down in our wastewater, we have a $380,000 drawdown that's directly related to the Southwest Sewer Project, and the water capital improvement that was for our wells projects. So as you can see, a lot of those drawdowns, like you said, Council Member Shelby, that they're related to either the capital spending. I guess that would be basically the explanation.
Yeah, capital equipment and IT.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have a hard time keeping all of this straight. So I think it would be way easier for me if we could have subtotals that are expense, capital, wastewater, water, separate things where we can't really spend the money other places. So for example, all the wastewater stuff, a subtotal of that, because we can't spend that money anywhere else. Whereas the water, and you see what I'm saying? Because I don't, to me, when you're adding together wastewater and stormwater and water and capital and operating, that number doesn't
well, in
mean
this screen, they're not. So you can see these wastewater funds, water fund and stormwater fund. Those are the operating funds.
but they're still coming out of that separate budget. So all of this is expense. None of this is capital.
Oh, no, you can see in
It's
the summary
capital.
here, this is the
Yeah.
beginning fund balance. So this is the amount of money that we had at the beginning of the year, or that we anticipate having at start of 2021. Here's the proposed revenues for the year. Here's a column from the proposed expenditures. And if there's a surplus or deficit, and then the amount that we expect to leave at the end of the year.
But
And
do
then
you
it's broken-
understand? Do you
And
understand
this
what
is
I'm
all
saying
broken
about
down
the
by,
colors of money?
sorry?
Do you understand what I'm saying about the colors of money?
Yeah,
Because
I can-
I find it easier if we can have subtotals of that. And I mean, we still can have the grand total if people find it helpful, but I would find it a whole lot. I've been burned before, not in College Place. Want to make that clear, but I've been burned before when people gave us totals, and as it turned out, when we dug into it, they had been making up overhead operating by jacking up the overhead on their capital, et cetera. And so they've been mixing and matching money all over the place. So it turned out, we were way more in debt than we thought we were. So that's why I just, all of it added together doesn't really help me that much.
well, these are the individual components of each of them. So I'll see
Yeah,
what
but I guess I'm lazy. I don't want to take the time to add up all of the expense ones, all of the capital ones, all of the water ones. See what I'm saying? We can talk offline.
Sure.
Councilmember Peterson has a comment or question.
I understand. It's the whole change in fund balance. I think I would hate to get into like little subtotals all the way down. But I do, Councilmember Joey, I do understand, many of these reserve funds that are operating, it's a management or administrative decision to draw them down based on new estimates, and whatnot. And as long as the ending fund balance for an expense account is correct. And your concern is that we're mixing capital and expense in here together. Is that correct?
Yes, to me, it's like if I added up, I mean, it's basically what it is, as I understand it, is it's like all of our cash. But it's like adding up my investments, my retirement, my car loans, my checking account, and my savings account, adding it all up into one number. I still need to know, do I have enough money in my checking account to pay my current bills?
Well, actually,
So-
that number at the end is basically your checking account balance.
Well, maybe something we could talk about.
Because you cannot spend water money on anything but the water system.
Oh, no, well, you can spend it within the water, either in the capital or in the debt.
Yeah,
you're
you can
right,
spend it in
within-
operating capital or debt, but you can't spend it on, say, the street fund.
No,
Maybe in the
So that's
future.
why-
No. Yeah, I understand. I think maybe in the future, after this budget, I agree with you, Councilmember, we could maybe separate this out into what are capital expenditures and what are operating or ongoing expenses. Is that what you're thinking?
Basically,
I mean, you know, because if you have a loan and you're going to repay the loan, and if you're going to collect fees and pay off that, but I understand your point also as far as a movement in capital funds to make the overall summary look okay in comparison to maybe operating expenses or yeah, right, yeah. Yeah, something we probably look at in the future as far as doing
Exactly.
subtotals or yeah.
Yeah, I can work with you guys to determine how
Yeah.
you'd like to see it.
Good point.
Oh, and here is the can't see the numbers on my sheet. So here we added our reserve policy. These are the numbers that are in our finance policies about the reserve requirements. You can see under current expense, we have a 20% budgeted revenue reserve contingency. The target is 1.4, close to $1.5 million, and we're currently at 1.9 million. So we have significant excess over our reserve requirement. Under the current expense, we do have a targeted 10% current expense budget revenue target for our rainy day reserve fund, which is currently at $380,000 anticipated next year. It is short of that, but again, it's a target and we are slowly moving. This will be the third year that we had this rainy day fund reserve account. And you can see under our street fund, we have a 60-day operating and maintenance reserve requirement. It's at $135,000. We're $56,000 in excess on that one. Under our commercial drive bond debt service, we have to keep 1 year of annual debt service, and that we keep at pretty much that level. We do have a targeted maintenance for our facility maintenance reserve fund of $300,000. We're under that, but then again, that's a target, and we are hopefully moving in the direction of building that fund back up. You can see in the next three funds, 400, 401, 402 are our utility operating funds. Those all three require a 60-day operating and maintenance reserve. And you can see by the numbers on the right, we're in excess of our requirements at that level. Under 412 and 413, those are our debt service accounts for our water and wastewater funds. They require us to have a 1 year annual debt service, and we're in compliance on those funds as well. The final one is our equipment repair and replacement fund, which requires 60 days of operating and maintenance expenditures. And you can see that we're well in compliance on that fund as well. Sorry, so was there any questions on that? All right, our next steps. Sorry, was there a question?
I'm sorry, I'm talking too much here. What was it? What's the total of that, of those reserves? Do you know?
I don't have that number.
No, that's okay. No, that's okay. That's all right.
I can add that in there.
That's fine.
I didn't add it up because the relevance isn't.
Yeah.
Because you're taking a factor that's based on different components, and to total them up is not a really valuable number.
Yeah, just the.
Are you talking the ending balance or the?
No, the excess, the shortfall or loan. It's okay. No, I just wanted. I was going to.
No, I can have that. I can add that in for the next presentation.
Yeah, thanks, Brian.
Because remember, this is just the preliminary. So our next steps is that we're going to make any final changes for the next workshop, which is on the 1st of December, and then we're going to have the final hearing and adoption proposal on the council meeting on the 8th of December. Just a few weeks away. And I'll work on a method of trying to get the numbers presented so they mean a little bit more from a debt operating fund perspective.
All right, so we're gonna go through the council members to see if there's any other questions or comments. And Councilman Peterson, don't be shy. So we'll start with Mr. Bobbitt.
No questions.
Okay, Mr. Cleveland,
Yeah, I wasn't paying attention. Could you repeat everything you said for the last half hour, please? I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I
No
can.
question. Thank you. Please don't.
all right, Mr. Peterson, you're up.
No questions.
Ms. Nyhagen,
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Selby,
I don't have any questions, but I do want to note that I appreciate all the work that went into this. I did notice on one of the pie charts, I think it was, we had, or I don't remember, it might have been a table. It had contributions and private contributions. And I think maybe those are basically the same thing and could be merged, but that's just a note.
Yeah, I noticed that. I didn't have time to change it.
all right, Ms. Sherman.
No questions. Thank you.
Okay, so please use your buttons to raise your hand if there's any additional comments or questions. At this time, I will open up the floor for public comment. Did anyone submit a comment?
No, they did not, and we still do not have any participating attendees.
Okay, great. Okay, so again, if you have any questions, please use your button to raise your hand. Otherwise, is there a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. The hearing is closed at 8:06 p.m. Okay, we're going to move on to action items. The first item is the 2021 to 2026 capital facilities plan that Mr. Rizzatello just presented for public hearing. So we're going to go through the council members one more time in case you have any questions or comments. Mr. Bobbitt,
No questions.
Mr. Cleveland,
No questions.
Mr. Peterson,
No questions.
Ms. Nyhagen,
No questions.
Ms. Selby,
No questions.
and Ms. Sherman.
No questions.
Okay, so please use your button if you need to give additional comments or questions. Otherwise, is there a motion? Councilmember Cleveland,
I would like to motion to approve ordinance number 20-018, which adopts the fiscal year 2021 to 2026 capital facility plan.
great, thank you.
Second, this is Councilmember Selby.
Great. Any additional comments or discussion items? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? The ayes have it, the motion is passed. Next item is the 2021 to 2026 equipment replacement plan that Mr. Rizzatello will represent.
Yeah, thank you. So again, this is set up in a very similar format to capital facility plans. So you have the booklet format if you're so interested in all the details of things. If you want the Cliff's Notes, you can go to the summary. Name of project is the name. Prioritization. High means we need to do it no matter what. Medium is as funds allow, and low is pretty much only if we can locate grant funds for it. it at the given time. So I will go through the key projects going into next year, because really the only ones that are for the most part set in stone is next year, and the remaining couple of years is the planning period. And you'll see that under status, very similar things. So budget means that it'll go next year. The one that says budget dash COVID delay, and it's in a lighter green, means that we'll hold on it a little bit just to make sure that all of our revenues are holding to projections before we go do that. And then orange is planned. So administration, community development, again, the generator for City Hall, because right now we have a old one that only powers one outlet. So should we get into an emergency, that really won't do good at all. So we have that in there to take care of that. Fire department, turnouts, that's perpetual every year. Doing leases for fire captain and fire marshal vehicles, so that's in there. The air pack replacement, we work on that every year. And then a wildland fire truck, like a gently used one. And that one's on delay as we're monitoring revenues. Police department, continuing the vehicle leasing program and taser replacement, because many of our tasers are to a point where they aren't under warranty anymore and they need to be replaced. And actually, with ordering them the same time as the body cameras, which are in the IT plan, we actually get a cost savings doing that. So that helps. So that's in the police department. Streets, we have a Stellar truck replacement and utility truck. Both of those are on a minor delay just so we monitor revenues. The key thing we need to do no matter what is that grader, because they are having problems keeping it up and it's very old. So we need to get that fixed, because we use that for snow removal. Then the Jacobs contract addendum for all of the equipment, just take care of all that out at the wastewater treatment plant, very cost effective, continuing that. And then vehicle replacement within the water department. So grand total is about 902,000. And then the 6-year total is 5.5 million. And a lot of what drives the 6-year total is a lot of expensive equipment in the fire department. And then also grader is quite expensive as well. So a variety of things. But that is the equipment replacement plan.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. We're going to go through the council members for questions or comments, and starting with Mr. Bobbitt.
No questions.
Mr. Cleveland,
No questions.
Mr. Peterson. Did we lose him? I think we did. All right, Ms. Nyhagen,
No questions.
Ms. Selby,
No questions.
Ms. Sherman.
No questions.
All right. So, and Mr. Peterson is not.
Mr.
logged in.
Peterson just sent me a message that he lost his internet.
Okay. All right. So we're going to move on then. Again, use your little hand to rear button to raise your hand. Is there a motion?
I move we accept it.
Okay.
Woman
Great. Thank you. Is there a second?
Should I read that, dear?
Yes,
Yes,
please.
please.
A motion to adopt ordinance number 20-019, which adopts the fiscal year 2021 to 2025 equipment replacement plan.
Great. Thank you. And Mr.
It
26,
is
I'm sorry.
2026, yes.
Okay.
Oh, and Mr. Peterson is back.
Great. And Mr. Cleveland?
I will second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Great. The ayes have it and the motion is passed. Welcome back, Mr. Peterson.
Yeah, we lost our internet at our whole area here. So we're back. Thank you.
Oh,
What's that?
goodness. Okay. So the next item is the 2021 to 2026 Information Technology Plan, and Mr. Rizzatello is going to present that one as well.
Thank you. So I presented this for the last several meetings. So, I mean, I'm not going to go over it super in depth. The main thing I tried to change relative to past years is while you can segregate this data by hardware, software, and staffing for purposes of looking at it from a departmental perspective, I felt it was good to divvy it up by department. So we have an administrative and finance section, which is general government cost center, then community development, and then police, fire, and then the various sundry utilities. So luckily with some of the COVID grant money we got, we were able to make a headway on things that were on our horizon for a long time, but we were having problems getting there, pertaining to the asset management, the community development program, and then just a variety of other things that were needed, and we're able to get there now. So a lot of what you're seeing in here is software maintenance. The other big cost drivers is trying to finally deal with some deferred capital projects that have been deferred for a while, just because once we got deep into them, we found out they were more money than initially thought once we got some quotes to really feel out the project. So again, replacing city council chambers AV system, because that ages back to when Charter Spectrum used to give out those systems, and yeah, it's just really hard maintaining them. Then getting the server room going with video walls for council chambers so people can see the presentations better. That was something that's been discussed for
Uh-oh, it looks like you've frozen, Mike.
Can't hear Mike.
So those are some intense capital. They're also in the police department, the 911. Oh, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
we're back up.
You might try turning off the video. It might help. Sometimes, I don't know. Sometimes when you're breaking up, taking that bandwidth off will help.
Okay. Okay. The other cost item that is different from in past years too is with police department budgeting for body cameras. So doing implementation on that, that's been a significant item of discussion at some of our beginning diversity and inclusion advisory board meetings. So getting that going, and then also the regional 911 server that essentially runs the whole 911 system for the valley. That was supposed to be replaced this year, and City of Walla Walla decided to defer it a year. So we have to pay our share of that. So there's a lot of these like bigger ticket one-time expense items too, but then we'll be past that point. And then after next year, we'll be caught up on a lot of the computer replacements too, where there'll be a more steady stream of replacement as opposed to getting hit heavily for a variety of years. And then beyond that, software maintenance. So we're really going to be in a good place. That's all I have. Hopefully I didn't like freeze out again.
You did. But you were, I wonder if you're affected by the same thing that was happening to Councilmember Peterson. Councilmember Cleveland, your hand's been up for quite some time. Did you have a question or comment, or are you just stuck in the raised position?
I think I forgot to take it down after I seconded.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's go for any questions. I know Mike kept going in and out. So if you all have any questions, just let him know for clarification. So Mr. Peterson? I'm
No, no
sorry.
questions. Thanks.
I went straight to you.
Yeah, get it done fast.
Sorry. Mr. Bobbitt,
No questions.
Mr. Cleveland,
No questions.
second chance, Mr. Peterson.
No, I think Mike's done such a good job up even at this point explaining it. It's well understood. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. Ms. Nyhagen,
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Selby,
No questions, thank you.
and Ms. Sherman.
No questions.
Councilmember Peterson, I just tease you, but you bring up some very good questions, so please don't stop.
We'll see.
All right, so if there's any other questions or comments, please raise your hand. Otherwise, is there Councilmember Nyhagen or Bobbitt?
I have a desire to make a motion to adopt ordinance number 20-020, which adopts the fiscal year 2021 to 2026 information technology plan.
Great, thank you. I'm
Council.
sorry, who just second? Who seconded?
Councilwoman Nyhagen.
Okay, great, thank you. Is there any additional comments or questions? Okay, let's vote then. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right.
All opposed? All right, the ayes have it. The motion is passed. Thank you all. So next item is the Unified Development Code and zoning amendments to Title 14 by Mr. Rickard. Oh, there he is. He's been hiding from us. Hope you're on mute, John. There you go.
There I go. Sorry, I had myself off camera for such a long time that I forgot about it. Good evening. Thank you. Greg Doran is with us tonight to answer any questions. But in short, we've been working through this process. As you recall, last year we updated and totally revamped our development code zoning. And over the course of the year, we've identified a few problems. We had the desire to add a few things here and there. So with that, I don't see Greg. There he is. Greg, go ahead and give us a rundown.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. We did go over this at a previous session, and I'm mindful of the hour and see that you have additional items on your agenda. So I will be very brief, but certainly don't hesitate to let me know if you have any questions. We have two ordinances on your agenda tonight. The first one would update the College Place Unified Development Code. Those are the regulations that govern building and development within the city. There are a number of administrative revisions and updates and clarifications, and a few substantive recommendations from the Planning Commission, including the prohibition of growing industrial hemp within the city limits, and clarification of the regulations governing accessory dwelling units, accessory buildings, and RV parks. And there also is some minor amendments to the city's official zoning map proposed, primarily to account for property acquired by the city and annexed for public purposes. So that's the first ordinance. The second ordinance, as we discussed at the previous meeting, we're just trying to be organized and to work ahead a little bit and save the city some time and money. This second ordinance would update the international building codes that the city adopts and implements. They would be effective February 1st. But we would have it in place now and ready to go when the time comes, and that would save the city the additional advertising expenses if we were to wait to a later date. So Mayor, I will stop at this point to see if there are any questions from you or other members of the City Council.
All right. Any questions from anyone at the council? Please raise your hand. All right. I do not see any. And I am sorry, I just accidentally closed out my agenda. So one quick moment. My apologies. I'll get it right back up. Technology.
Here's some information.
Okay, sorry about that as well. Oh, goodness.
Did I forget to note that Alexa was in the meeting as well?
Sorry. I don't know how that happened. I'm almost there. Okay, so let me find back where we were at. So nobody has any questions for John or Greg to kind of help me out here while I find my place.
None.
Thanks. Okay, let's go through the council members. Well, let's start with Mr. Bobbitt,
No questions.
Mr. Cleveland,
No questions.
Mr. Peterson,
No questions.
Ms. Hagen,
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Selby,
No questions.
and Ms. Sherman.
No questions.
All right, I would tell you use your little button to raise your hand, but nobody seems to have any questions. So is there a motion? Councilmember Peterson.
Make sure I'm off mute. Yeah. I move to approve ordinance number 20-021, repealing, replacing the Title 14 and changes to the official zoning map.
I'll second.
Great, there's a first and a second. Any additional discussion? No, okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? The ayes have it. The motion is passed. And thank you all very much for all that hard work. I'm excited to get that done and over and get moving on this. So thank you all very much. Councilmember Bobbitt or Nyhagen?
This is Councilmember Bobbitt, and I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance number 20-022, 2018 International Building Code update.
Did I miss something?
There's two motions on this agenda.
Oh, okay. I see it. There it is. Okay. Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second Councilmember Cleveland.
Thank you, Councilmember Cleveland. All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? All right, the ayes have it. The motion is passed. Second one. Thank you, Councilmember Bobbitt.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This is another significant accomplishment, and I hope that you and your families and all your loved ones and the entire community is able to remain safe, healthy, and to celebrate and give great thanks on Thanksgiving Day. We all have much to be thankful for, and I wish you all the very best and look forward to talking to you again soon. So I will, at this point, exit. And once again, thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dorn, to you and your family as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I could, I'd like to thank the Planning Commission for all the hard work that they put in throughout the year working on this. And, you know, it's all volunteer time. And if you see them out in the community, give them a elbow bump or something and thank them for their hard work.
Absolutely. Thank you for that reminder, Mr. Rickard. Thank you. All right, so we're going to continue on. The next is the National Flood Insurance Program Ordinance Update by Mr. Rickard.
Thank you. The NFIP program, it allows our residents to purchase flood insurance, and there are some standards that we're required to have within our code. and periodically we have to go through that and update that. The Department of Ecology, it's a national program, federal program, but it's administered through the Department of Ecology, and periodically, every 7 to 10 years, they try to get a hold of us and guide us through the process and help us make recommendations for changes to the program. So brought this to you last week, or excuse me, at the last council meeting, and just asking that you, what this tonight's action would do is repeal, there's 4 ordinances that are out there that dating back to 1975 that when we first entered into the program. And so that would repeal those 4 and then adopt the current standards, and then also codify them in Chapter 8, Title 8. Any questions?
So any questions? So we'll start with Mr. Bobbitt.
I'm still kind of scanning through. Come back to me. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Cleveland,
No questions.
Mr. Peterson,
No questions.
Ms. Nyhagen,
No questions.
Ms. Selby,
No questions. I would just like to note this is a really important project that it's helpful for our citizens to know about in case of floods.
yeah, absolutely. And Ms. Sherman.
No questions.
All right, we're going to go back to Mr. Bobbitt. Any questions at this time or comments?
No questions.
Okay, great. Thank you. If you use your button to raise your hand if there is any additional comments or questions. Otherwise, is there a motion? Councilmember Peterson?
I'll bite this one off. I'd like to move to approve ordinance number 20-023, repealing ordinance number 42, 867, 903, 976, approving participation in the National Flood Insurance Program, also known as NFIP, and codifying the NFIP in Title 8, Health and Safety, as Chapter 8.30, National Flood Insurance Program.
I do want to clarify that first repealed ordinance is 422.
What did I say?
42.
Yeah, I'll modify it to 422.
Thank you.
Thank you for catching up.
Councilwoman Nyhagen, second.
Great, thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, the ayes have it and the motion is passed.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, Councilmember Cleveland, I thought I saw your hand up. Did you?
It was briefly, I was going to point out the correction of the 422.
Okay.
But,
Great, thank you. Okay, so moving on then. We're gonna the revised ordinance for discharge of firearms in the city by Chief Tamaris.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Council. Thanks for having me on tonight to talk about this. So we actually presented this a couple months ago. We thought that we needed to make some additions to it, so we made some small changes and are resubmitting discharging a firearm within the city limits.
All right, so let's go through the council members for any questions, starting with Mr. Bobbitt.
I'm kind of reviewing the document right now. Come back, please.
Okay, Mr. Cleveland,
no questions.
Mr. Peterson,
No questions.
Ms. Nyhagen,
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Selby,
No questions. Thank you for your work on this.
Ms. Sherman.
No questions.
All right, so we're gonna round back to Mr. Bobbitt.
Looks good to me. No questions.
Okay, great. All right, use the button to raise your hand if any additional comments or questions. Otherwise, is there a motion? Do we have a motion? Councilmember,
This is Councilmember Bobbitt. I'll make a motion to adopt ordinance number 20-024 that repeals previously passed ordinance number 20-014, which was put on hold after passing, and replaces it, creating chapter 9.26, discharge of firearms prohibited in the College Place Municipal Code.
okay, Councilmember Sherman,
I'll second.
any other additional discussion? All right, let's vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it and the motion is passed. Thank you, Chief. Next is the Police Department Evidence Building Contract Award for construction by Mr. Rickard.
Thank you. So just asking for you to authorize the administration to enter into a contract with S&K Mountain Construction. They were the low bidder on this project. If you're not familiar with the project, it's a building that will be utilized to process evidence when like a vehicle is impounded or and that's teared apart or other evidence processing. It's a cooled space. There's also some outside storage areas, chain link area that meets the requirements for outside storage. And building this building will allow us to further add additional office space and conference space to the City Hall building. So the S&K Mountain was a low bidder at 149,500. We are asking for a 10% contingency, although I'm not expecting that we'll need to use it, but so the total project cost would not exceed $164,450 without further council authorization. Any questions?
Great, thank you. So we'll start with Mr. Bobbitt. Any questions or comments?
No questions.
Mr. Cleveland,
No questions.
Mr. Peterson,
None here.
Ms. Nyhagen,
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Selby.
No questions, thank you.
Okay, great, Ms. Sherman.
No questions. I think it looks awesome. And since I have the floor, can I make a motion?
Absolutely, please do.
I would make a motion to award the Police Department Evidence Processing Building Project to S&K Mountain Construction Incorporated in the amount of $149,500 plus a 10% contingency of $14,950, not to exceed $164,450.
Okay, great. Is there a second?
Councilmember Selby, I'll second.
Okay, great. Are there any additional discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the ayes have it, the motion is passed. Next item is regarding DCO Road street parking issue by Mr. Rizzatello.
Thank you. So this item has been going on for a bit, but about last year, there was like a no parking sign put further down by Whitman to try to allow for more room. That has since not helped. We've received a lot of complaints from people on DCO Road because there is a resident over there that tends to put a lot of equipment on said road. Interesting thing about the southern periphery of DCO Road is back when it was designed, it's almost like an inverted teardrop in a way. So the right of way, if you go on the DCO memo redacted, you'll see it. The pavement width actually goes from 34 feet down to 24 feet. And we've been getting complaints because people have problems safely making it up and down DCO. And then apparently they've had to move a bus stop as well due to some clearance issues over there. So to try to bring some finality to this, decided to run this past the Utilities and Transportation Advisory Commission with all of the data. And they recommended basically a treatment, whereas from the section where it's 24 to 28 feet, in that part, that there's no parking on either side. Then when it goes from 28 to 34 feet, there's parking on one side. And then once it gets to 34 feet and upwards, then parking can be on both sides. So that was the recommendation of the Utilities and Transportation Advisory Commission. And that's what's before you today. It basically put in that requirement. Chief Tamaris, do you have anything to add on this?
No, Mike, I appreciate it. This is definitely a group of concerned citizens that live in DCO. We've had numerous complaint calls and responses to this area, and it seems like the recommendation is going to be a good way to mitigate the problem.
All right, great. So this has never happened to me, but my laptop's just about to run out of battery. So hopefully I don't lose anybody. This has been a long meeting. So we're going to go to council members for any discussions, and starting with Mr. Bobbitt.
No questions right now. Looks pretty clear, the problem.
Okay, Mr. Cleveland.
I tried driving DCO the other day after hopping on briefly on that board that was mentioning it. I was curious. Watched it on YouTube, and there was actually someone parked on both sides, and it basically went to a one-lane road. It was pretty harrowing, so it's pretty legit to change this up.
Great. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Mr. Peterson.
No questions.
Ms. Nyhagen.
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Selby.
I just discovered I've been pronouncing the street name wrong for like forever, apparently, but no other questions.
So how have you been pronouncing it?
Yeah.
Decchio.
Okay.
We're all pronouncing it wrong, and it actually Decchio.
I like yours better.
All right, Ms. Sherman.
I guess that's how we tell who grew up here and knew the family. I don't have any questions either.
All right. So please use the button to raise your hand if you have any other questions. Otherwise, is there a motion?
This is Councilmember Selby. I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution number 20-049, which sets parking regulations on Northeast Decios Road.
Okay, Councilmember Cleveland.
I'll second.
All right. Is there any additional discussion? All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. The ayes have it. The motion is passed. And the last action item is an addendum to the Southwest Wastewater Trunk Line Project Memorandum of Understanding by Mr. Rizzatello. And I'm going to quickly log out and log in somewhere else, and I'll be right back with everybody.
Okay. Okay, so sorry for getting this out so late, the Southwest Wastewater Addendum MOU, but we've been going back and forth between parties literally up until when you got it. So that is the reason why it took longer. It just sets forth some timelines and conditions for things, such as that when the sewer is completely constructed, we get a 20-foot easement. While they're constructing it, it's a temporary 50-foot easement that can be basically extended between parties. There's in here where essentially the parties get up to 9 wastewater utility connections free of charge. Rationale being is while we're doing the intrusive construction, we're actually cutting off farming access, and there's basically a potential claim of damages having to go around that. So I looked at what the port's done, because they've done some construction work up around like the paper mill with some private landowners, and this is very comparable to what other parties have done. So that looked fair. And this just sets forth the conditions to go forward. And with this, the property owners, they have agreed to sign over the easement that's needed so we can go to town on this project and get it going, because the grant funders really want us to go now, but we need the easements.
Okay, great. I know Mr. Rizzatello was coming in and out, so if anybody needs some clarification, please let him know. Otherwise, we'll go through the council members for any questions. Mr. Bobbitt,
No questions.
Mr. Cleveland,
No questions. Thanks for working on such a complicated thing.
Mr. Peterson,
No questions.
Ms. Nyhagen,
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Selby,
No questions.
and Ms. Sherman.
No questions.
All right, so we're gonna move on. Is there a motion? And you know what? I can't see little hands, so I'm gonna just have to do it verbally.
This is Councilmember Cleveland. I'll motion to approve resolution number 20-050 that authorizes the mayor to sign Addendum 1, Memorandum of Understanding Southwest Wastewater Trunk Line Project.
Councilmember
Great.
Peterson, second.
Great. Any additional discussion? All right, let's vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? All right, the ayes have it. The motion is passed. Thank you, Mr. Rizzatello. It's been quite a few years coming. Okay, we're going to move on to administrative reports, and Ms. Cinnamon will present the administrative fees resolution update.
Hi, thank you. So I'll keep there's definitely not as many changes as there was last year, so that's good. Lisa, do you have the red line version? Can you bring that up? Just so we can go through it real quick. So really the first change is in section 3, letter K, and it has to do with signs. We wanted to add a penalty fee for late renewal, and that late renewal is the same. It's equal to the permit fee, which was added within the community development engineering department. And then in section 4, which is continued community development fees, letter C, we just kind of went through and we standardized 20%. So any costs that were actual costs, we just standardized the 20% admin fee. Some of them were 10, some of them weren't. So we just went through and did a standard 20%. We removed the word administrative because appeals actually go to the hearing examiner and it's not administrative. And then for you, we the special use permit went from 150 or to 150 from 125 to be standardized with the vacation rentals. Did I skip around? Oh, then the lettering got put off. So we actually moved vacation rentals, which was Z, up to U, which is the special use permit, because that's the way that the code reads. So we standardized that. And then we also added the penalty fee for the late renewal as well. And then in section 5, which is engineering site plan and development support review fees. Maybe. Oh, it didn't get redlined. And it didn't get updated. So I will make sure that that is correct for the next meeting. But the review fee of $25 for A should actually be $350. The community development director thought that $25 was not really realistic, and so it was changed to $350. And then in C, we standardized it. Instead of 25%, it's changed to 20% for the third-party review fee, and then within the paragraph as well. And then for F, we added F. It's third-party professional services, which is actual cost plus the 20% admin fee, and that's to help with the engineering department, which is the on-call with JEB. And then in the fire department, this was actually missed. It was supposed to be changed last year and didn't get changed, so we just changed it to the commercial cooking hood instead, per request. And then for Public Works and within finance, the utility rates got updated. So you saw that in Brian's presentation per the utility rate models. So instead of $1.51 per 1,000 gallons, it's now $1.59. And then all of the changes as well within the finance section for the monthly increases for the base fees for utility rates. In section 10, 10A actually, we wanted to add loft space as well to the exemption for the accessory dwelling units. And then really the majority of, or all of the rest of it is just the updates to the utility rates. Which again, were presentation.
Okay, thank you so much. So we're going to go through the council members for any questions, starting with Mr. Bobbitt.
No questions.
Mr. Cleveland,
No questions.
Mr. Peterson,
No questions.
Ms. Nyhagen,
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Selby,
I have one quick question. On the late fee for the signs, is there a grace period?
John, do you have any input on that?
So the plan is to utilize Azavar to help us, because it's an annual. These are for this, like the sandwich board signs, and I suppose when we get that figured out with Azavar, they'll help us notify the property owners on these renewals that occur every year. And so we could structure it that there's like a 30-day grace period or something like that.
I'm sorry, Azavar?
Oh, the local gov, it's the same company that we're using to do our vacation rentals.
I would recommend somewhat of a late grace period, 15 days, 30 days, something like that.
Okay.
I also missed, and Lisa had pointed it out at the very end there, that we added a $5 fee for events for youth vendors. That was an addition that I forgot to mention.
okay, thank you. Ms. Sherman,
No questions.
okay. Did anybody else have a question with the addition of what Ms. Cinnamon just shared?
Well, have we decided or is it 15 or 30?
The fee is $5.
No, the grace period.
Oh,
I would just do a 30. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just easier.
Okay.
I think it's a little more flexible.
Are late payments on that a problem, John? Is that why we're adding this?
Well, we don't get a lot of compliance on the sandwich board signs. That's why we want to have you Azavar help us with that. So they'll register their sandwich board signs through the Azavar program, the local gov program, similar to the vacation rentals. And they are businesses, so we want to make sure that they're keeping up to the standards of the city. And it encourages compliance is what it does.
And I would, in general, where we have late fees, suggest like at least a 15-day grace period, because things do happen.
We just said 30 days, right?
Whatever you guys want.
Let's 15 is an odd number. Let's go ahead. I would suggest 30, you know, for this first year at least, as we break this in.
I'm fine with 30. Because I don't know what we do with like dog tags and stuff like that, but I just hate that no mercy.
I mean, they get a bill and they know what the cost is. So isn't that not, I mean, I know that's harsh, but I don't know. I like to pay on time.
I guess, and these are hopefully rare events, but you know, when you end up with, you have to be out of town unexpectedly for a month because your son is in the hospital or, you know, whatever. Stuff happens, you know? So one person thought the other person sent it, you know? So I think, I just think a grace period makes sense for annual things. Now, if it's like a monthly thing, I don't think we should have a 30-day late grace period.
John, do you know if Azavar sends out reminders?
They'll do whatever we want. I mean, I don't know specifically what their reminder period is. It's probably, I would imagine, 60 days somewhere in there before the bills are due, their annual renewal.
Councilmember Peterson, I think the fact that this is, if I understand this at all correctly, this is a new penalty, perhaps for this first year or so, you know, since this is new, there could be a 30-day grace period. We could revisit this next year after they all know that there's a penalty involved with not keeping things in, you know, from going sideways. So I would just say, yeah, 30-day grace period, since it's a new penalty, and I guess we can move right along here.
Don't be like the county where they send a bill in October for something due in January and then they send another copy in November and in December.
Yeah, like that.
No, it's such a waste of paper. Don't do that.
All right. So if there's no other questions, we're going to move on to the next item, which will be Chief Tamaris to present the misuse of 911 emergency response system ordinance proposal.
Thank you, Mayor. Incidentally, only a few more days of No Shave November, and if anybody else wants to donate to our cause, that's a shameless plug. This is the misuse of or abuse of the 911 system. Our city prosecutor recommended the ordinance to assist with her prosecution. There is an RCW that assists as well. However, many cities have an ordinance to enforce misuse of 911 or emergency response systems. Whether you're calling or texting or messaging the 911 or alternate number, when no actual emergency, potential emergency exists, and when the caller or message sender does not have a good faith basis to contact 911. So we do have a few of those in our community. So this would be a nice ordinance to help with that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chief. Let's go on for some questions. Anything or comments, Mr. Bobbitt?
No questions.
Mr. Cleveland?
No questions.
Mr. Peterson?
Yeah. Who determines if it's a misuse?
Yeah, so obviously there has to be an investigation that is conducted. So normally dispatch will notify us of the call, and then we follow up on it, and we warn them, please do not misuse the 911 system. Some people think it's a game. And then it's usually repeated behavior. And perhaps Ree, if you want to comment on anything.
Sure. Really, this is specifically in response to one individual who keeps calling 911. And I'll just give you some examples. Papa Murphy's would not refund his money, and so he called 911. He gets in arguments with his roommate, eating his food and not leaving him alone, and so he calls 911. And under the state law, you're prohibited from making a false report. And so when we looked at these phone calls, he really wasn't saying anything false, but it was not something that we want to spend our valuable energy on. And so hopefully we don't ever have to cite anyone, and this will just be a deterrent from doing that. So really, I think they're pretty black and white cases.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you.
I can think of a couple incidents also off the top of my head from Waypoint. People call 911 for things that were not emergency related. We've had a few of those responses, and not just to the police department, but also to the fire department.
All
Thank
right,
you.
so moving on, Ms. Nyhagen,
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Selby. I'm
No
sorry.
questions.
Okay. And Ms. Sherman.
No questions.
All right. Thank you all. Thank you, Chief, for that. And thank you, Ree. We appreciate that. Okay. You will see on your agenda that there's several monthly reports in the packet for your review on informational reports. That's section 7. And if there is not any other business for good of the order, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Councilmember Jerry, motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Councilmember Cleveland, so moved.
Great. If there's no objections, the meeting is adjourned at 9:01 p.m.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. God bless you.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Likewise, happy Thanksgiving.